you can still find on the internet Peter Schiff, the failed reactionary candidate in Connecticut. He says the default of the United States would be a good thing. Why do they want it? Remember, these are right-wing anarchists. Their theory is to starve the beast. That means essentially bankrupt the federal government. Their idea is that if you cannot borrow money, if you destroy the full faith and credit of the United States government and make that into a laughingstock, then the United States government cannot borrow for any reason. And this of course, includes war. It's the same story. This is where you get into the little matter of a state of emergency and several wars, quite a few wars going on now that you didn't have in 1995. But they feel that the response to the inability to borrow will be to force the government to live within the realm, the realm of the tax income, the tax revenue, and that will mean, of course, the destruction of Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, unemployment benefits, Head Start, WIC, and all the other essential programs that make up the tattered remnants of the New Deal safety net. And again, they will probably say, well, no, we'll do it in such a way so that the defense budget is shielded. Well, once you have a default, you can't borrow for any reason. So they'll say, we'll maintain the funds going into the defense budget. But, of course, once you can't float a bond issue, it's not clear that there'll be enough for that either. So this is a recipe for catastrophe. Such an event, again, in 1995, it was a minus 5% in the stock market in one day. If it's minus 25%, I'm sorry, not in the stock market, but in the dollar in one day, if it becomes this mudslide, then you have a world catastrophe. Remember, if you read Surviving the Cataclysm, my compendium of essential knowledge on real economics, not this Austrian school baloney, no Austrian baloney, but American system nourishment, you will see that the nightmare of Paul Adolph Volcker, as long as he was at the Federal Reserve, was that once the dollar began to slide, and we now have this, once the dollar began to slide, it might turn into an unstoppable mudslide, as we've seen, in the California valleys when it rains too much and the vegetation is not enough, or various places in Latin America. The whole side of the mountain comes down, and there's no force available to stop it. We now may be very close to this, so we cannot allow a bunch of right-wing anarchists in the Congress to throw their crazy weight around at the expense of the American people, because make no mistake, the national bankruptcy and default of the United States would be catastrophic for the average American working family. It would be a catastrophe. And it's very easy to make facile statements about this, how the U.S. is bankrupt and all this stuff. It's baloney. The U.S. is viable much more so than Moody's, Fitch, and Standard & Poor's. As a matter of fact, as I've said repeatedly, Moody's, Fitch, and Standard & Poor's ought to be quaking in the criminal dock because of their corruption in 2008, when they were telling you that Lehman Brothers was AAA and subprime was AAA until minutes before the bottom fell out of the whole thing, and those poor schmoes who believed them will be left high and dry. So that's the question. And, of course, even somebody with the mediocre political skills of Clinton was able to cast Gingrich, Army, and the rest of them as villains in 1995. The big problem we have is Obama is such a weakling, such a wuss, such a bungler, so devoted to Wall Street, so remote from the American people that it looks like he might capitulate. He might then pitch the United States into chaos. That would then put him in the same dock along with these other perpetrators. We'll be back in a minute.